All right. It's 7:01. The City Council caucus meeting is adjourned or open. Oh, what a good start. All right, the first item up for discussion is medicinal cannabis zoning regulations. So we did receive some documentation from Sharma Lee on PDS's evaluation, and Jack is going to take over from here.
All right, if we could put it up on the big screen. I'm glad I have it in front of me because there's no way I could see that. So I'll hit the highlights. I think that we have kind of discussed that we do not want to invoke a ban here, and we do not want to take it to the voters. I think that was kind of the general thought at our last discussion. Just want to remind everybody that if we wanted to do a petition to take this issue to the voters, that resolution would be due to the county clerk on August 13th. So we would have to act prior to August 13th. Now, it seems like the direction we're taking is we want to allow it and then improve our zoning code. So PDS has done that for us, and our zoning amendment application is due to PDS June 12th, which means that we've got to pass our resolution on this at our June meeting, and then we as a city would then have to make our application to PDS on June 12th. So if you recall, there are a lot of regulations. If we go to the next slide, if we could try to blow it up too. Yeah. So if you all recall, there's a lot of regulations in place as to where these cannot go, okay? So they cannot go, there's buffer zones for childcare locations, public schools, private schools, and the buffer zones for childcare are 1,000 feet, for schools are 1,000 feet. So all of those bubbles in brown, yellow, and purple, purple is childcare or pink, purple, yellow is public schools, brown is private schools. Those are all buffer zones where these businesses cannot locate based on current buffer zones. So if you could scroll down just a little bit, Peter, I think you guys see that with all of these buffer zones in place, you know, it already kind of significantly limits opportunities or options that are out there. And I will email this out to everybody after tonight, so you all can kind of look at this and see it. And then again, this is PDS that did this data. So if we go to the next slide, these are the Erlanger industrial zones with buffer. So this now is putting our industrial zones in there with the various buffer zones. And again, there's plenty of places, certainly in our GI and our BP, you know, if you look out, these are all areas that would sort of escape that. So certainly everything out at Circle Port, all those areas would all be opportunities. And then if we go to our third slide, it talks about our commercial zones. And these are our current commercial zones where dispensaries would be located. And those would be in the community commercial zone, the highway commercial zone, and the neighborhood commercial zone. So again, all of those areas that don't have buffers, which is that top slide, go back up. Yep. Anywhere that's not a buffer that you can kind of see the highlighted red areas, those are areas that it could locate in neighborhood commercial, community, or whatever CC is, and then highway commercial. So what's being proposed as a text amendment, if we scroll down to the next slide, scroll down, sure, scroll again. Yeah, there we go. That in our table of contents, we would add a section called medical cannabis, and then basically in our table of uses, you would see, go down to the next slide, that our table of uses, that it would be that cultivation, processing, producing, and safety compliance would be permitted uses in all of our employment zones, which is our BP, our FI, and our GI. and that dispensaries would be permitted uses in all of our commercial zones, which are ROC, CC, and HC. And that we also would then regulate the street parking, off-street parking requirements. So it's pretty simple what PDS has done. All they've really done, like I said, is add as permitted uses in our, what would have been part of Z21, our industrial zones for cultivation, processing, producing, and safety compliance facilities, and then added in our old commercial zones, permitted uses as our dispensaries. And again, these could only go where there wouldn't be the 1,000-foot buffers. So any questions, thoughts? Again, I'll send this out to everybody so that you all can look at it with these buffer zones, because I think the buffer zones are kind of telling as to where these probably are actually going to end up when you factor in those buffer zones. But I will have a resolution ready at our next meeting, because to get this, PDS needs this in their hands, an application by us for June, for them to probably put it on their August Planning Commission meeting, and then it would come back to us in September and October for first and second reading. Any questions, thoughts? You guys are so easy on this issue compared to all my other cities. You know, it always amazes me. There's issues that I expect like hours and hours of debate on, and there's issues that seem like it's just smooth sailing.
Doesn't mean it's going to pass.
You know what? That's fair. That's fair.
Let's do all this work.
But seriously, any questions? I'll send out the email if you all have questions. Again, this is really straightforward. And I think, you know, the only thing that I would just sort of make sure people are aware of is these cultivation facilities are going to be in warehouses. So your cultivation facilities have a minimum square footage of 20,000 square feet, and frankly are going to be in industrial zones, and they're going to be sort of in industrial zone spaces. So just I want sure everyone understands that cultivation is not necessarily going to be out there growing in the open. In fact, it has to be an enclosed facility. All right, that's it. If there's, yes, I'm sorry. If someone chose to locate here and if they had a license for here. That's what this is proposing, is allowing them.
Ms. Kyle.
I just think it's a no-brainer. I mean, we need to allow it for people that need it, and we do have places where they can put it, and thank you to them for doing this for us. I appreciate that. I think it's a good idea.
I think PDS did an exceptional job. I mean, building the piece of software with the buffers, that's awesome. Like, excellent work.
All right, thank you all.
All right, next item up for discussion is fiscal year 25 wage scale. Ms. Kramer.
Yeah, I sent out the updated wage scale. It's been updated per my memo. The COLA of 3.4% and pay bands A through H have a range of 30,000, and I through L have a range of 25,000. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
All right. Next item is codification. Mr. Gatlin.
All right, this is just our annual housekeeping. Every year, as you all know, all the ordinances that we pass for any given year get codified in American legal and become a part of our official code. So we will have on an ordinance in 2 weeks that will have codified or basically included in our codification every ordinance that we passed in this last year. Again, very standard housekeeping. Every year we do it. For anyone that looks in American legal to find our ordinances, this is the process of converting them from the city website to that easily accessible indexed form. Any questions on that? All righty.
All right. Next item is municipal road aid funding. Peter Glenn.
Thank you. Real quick, so every year we do a MARFA Municipal Aid Road Fund public hearing. For the last 5 years, we've been doing that, and this year, Sherry has let us know that that is no longer necessary or required, the public hearing portion of it. So what they are requiring is during a council meeting that we present the data, the same we did in the public hearing, ask any questions. Pretty much the same information is going to go out. It just doesn't have to be part of a special hearing. It can be part of the council meeting, so that will be on the agenda for June. Thank you.
All right, next item is Alice Street Hillside.
Okay, so I'm up again. So the Alice Street Hillside right-of-way issue that we've been having, and I think a lot of discussions at the last council meeting regarding that. So what happened since is it went to the City Beautification Task Force, which met tonight, and for discussion and for some direction. And what the consensus was is to move forward with doing some fencing at the top of the hillside, kind of as a phase one approach for now. So what was the direction from the group was to move forward once we hit the new budget year, so July 1, when some additional funding becomes available, but more importantly, when some more time comes available for city staff to actually install the fence. So what will be happening on that particular project first will be in July. Kevin committed to July, and so the crews will be out installing that four-board horse fencing along the driveway at the top of the slope. Any questions on that? Great. All right, thank you.
All right. The hotel guest registry, Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. So just as a reminder, the last time we discussed the hotel guest registry was at our last caucus meeting. Since then, Council, you gave me the directive to go out and grab feedback. And so I did that, made contact with all 5 of our hoteliers here in Erlanger. In addition to that, Mayor Fetty and I had a meeting with Meet NKY and some additional hoteliers outside of the city just to grab feedback on our specific legislation. Overall, it was met generally the same, whether it was a motel, a hotel, high-end, low-end. They generally thought that it would be difficult to enforce. Some of their internal controls would not allow them to do some of the things that our legislation was proposing. So out of the May 3rd meeting with Meet NKY, we sort of started brainstorming, is there a different sort of arrow in our quiver that we can have the same solution, what we're trying to do, which is get a little bit more control on some of our hotels here in the city. And what we found was there may be not a legislation approach to this, but a technological approach. So we started doing a little bit of an investigation on what that would look like. What we landed on was something called a flock safety camera. And what a flock safety camera does is it gives us a targeted approach to be able to see who's coming and going. It gives our law enforcement a little bit more scalability to amplify some of the things that they are doing. And so what we have resolved, and you'll see this in your memo, is that we've gotten Meet NKY to agree to help beta test the flock cameras specifically in Erlanger, to pay for it, and then Chief Rader and I will work on potentially where they will go, where they will be deployed, but the net of this is that it's not going to cost Erlanger anything. Meet NKY has a charge to make sure that their guests in the region are safe, and so they want us to be the first ones out of the gate to sort of test that. Jennifer we had a conversation today about some potential concerns as it relates to privacy, and so I prepared a little bit of information on that, Peter, that I think has got this pulled up now. If you'll go, Peter, to the next slide on, So the flock safety cameras, here's what it does and here's what it doesn't. What it does do is it's got a license plate recognition feature. And so the cameras are not live streaming, they're not taking constant video. All they're doing is grabbing still images. So what this does is it gathers objective evidence. So essentially the camera is the tattletale. The police force are the ones that control the data. Flock does not own this data. It alerts police of warranted vehicles that may be in connection with crimes that are committing almost in real time. It helps our police solve crime a little bit. It adheres to all state laws. Also, what it does not do is they do not own the data. They do not store the data. It has no facial recognition. So this is really just about specific targeted vehicles that we can get a handle on. Peter, if you'll go to the next slide for me. So again, it's going to be proactive. In terms of actual dollar figures, they've committed to $21,000 for us this year, which will pay for up to 6 cameras. Chief Rader and I will try to figure out, do we need 6, do we need 4, or potentially could we stretch that across 2 years of time? So in theory, I feel like a recommended sort of solution to this would be a technological approach versus a legislative approach. Potentially, what we could do if the technological approach is not enough, look at our current nuisance ordinance as it relates to property, see if there's anything that we could do to potentially beef that up a little bit, but that would be my recommendation right now. Chief Rader, I don't know if you had done some research on this. I don't know if you have any insight that you'd like to add to that.
No, I know a lot of times when people talk about cameras, they're afraid that it is going to be an invasion of privacy. Supreme Court has said that there's no reasonable expectation of privacy on a license plate. Anybody can walk out onto Commonwealth, look at a car, see the license plate. There's nothing, that the general public can really do with that information. So that isn't a concern. We actually did pretty extensive research on flock cameras this year. I actually had them in the budget to propose, and they were very expensive. So it's something that I ended up taking out before we even presented the budget. The kind of added benefit that we can get if they're going to pay for the cameras, we have the added benefit of having access to all the data. So our detectives use it pretty frequently. If we're looking, right now we're having a lot of stolen cars. So our detectives are able to log into the system, look at the LPR data, the license plate reader data from all across the tri-state, and kind of track where some of these stolen cars are going to. So not only is it obviously a benefit for right here at the hotels, but it's a big benefit just as an investigative tool for the PD overall. So.
That's good. And one more point that Meet NKY, and I think we can utilize as well. This is going to be a deterrent, and this will be a public relation outreach that we will do to the community to signal that yes, we do have this. If we are having some of the problematic issues, those folks will also know about that. So I think that's a really strong play for us as well as a deterrent to have this. Yes, we want to utilize and amplify what our current police force is doing right now. But if we can deter and knock off bad behavior before it starts, I think that's a noble approach too. Yes.
I have a question. It might be for you, Mark, or Chief Rader. Other local departments in the area are already using these, correct? I had been through a presentation and saw, and I thought it looked like the same. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the cities, but I won't. I'm not supposed to, but other cities use them, right?
They do, and
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say it either.
So I'm not going to say, but I just want to make sure I've seen a presentation, I'm sold on them, so I think that, it'd be great for our city to do so.
Yeah, the only reason I don't want to mention it is I know some of the other cities that are going to it, they're currently in their budget talks, and I don't know if they've been approved or not. So I don't want to speak on whether they will be implementing them this year or not.
Was Diana finished? Oh, okay, I didn't know if you had your hand up again. I just did a quick Google search today, just flock cameras, and initially, everything that came up was all greater Cincinnati cities that use them, most on the other side of the river, but, I mean, just from a quick glance, in the last year, it sounds like these have really increased in usage across the river, in, you know, like you said, nice hotels, you know, I mean, just a variant of facilities. Mark, you had mentioned to me earlier that Flock has a presentation or something that they can show us that digs a little bit deeper into the privacy concerns. I'm fine with everything that's been presented, but I do, you know, I just wanted to make that, you know, if you could make that available, I guess, to us if we, as council, are interested in that. The only other thing I wanted to ask, and you might have said this, do the hotels have to disclose or put any kind of signage up that says you're under surveillance? I don't know. Is that required? So it wouldn't even be like the hotels put up a sign or anything like that that say that they are using these?
No, when we originally looked at it this year, we were going to have one at Commonwealth and Dixie, Kenton Lands and Dixie. I think one of them was either ramp 1 or ramp 3. So no, they literally come in, they put them up on a telephone pole. No one would even notice the camera. So I don't see any reason why the hotels would have to warn people that they're there.
Yeah, it would be in the public right away, and so they would utilize solar, they would install. That's why the original cost for this year would be a little bit higher than next year's. They generally charge $3,000 per camera, so we're estimating if we're doing 14,400 this year, 12,000 ongoing. Another value add is if for whatever reason Chief Rader and the police say, yeah, you know, we had them here, but maybe they're not being utilized. Maybe all the crime is gone by that point. So maybe we can redeploy them. There would be an additional setup and install charge, but we can definitely do that. Councilwoman Rutgers.
So you indicated that Flock doesn't retain the data at all. It's aggregated to you guys, right?
Yeah, my understanding is, from what I have seen when we signed up for the trial period, you know, it's username, user access specifically to the PD, and I think on one of the slides, I think it said, I think they only keep it for 30 days.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they keep it for 30 days. They do not have access to it. We're the only ones that do.
It's basically, just to make this as simple as possible, it's almost no different than an officer driving down Commonwealth and running license plates on his cruiser, on his MDC.
I understand. So my question is, you guys have access to the information. Who can gain access to it? Whether somebody did not, I'm just curious from like you're saying that people don't have there's a reasonable expectation that a license plate. What about a law-abiding citizen? Like, does somebody have access to that data for their whereabouts, et cetera?
No different than...
Would that be available by open records request?
No. No, any of the information I think that goes through, because this is going to have to go through NCIC, I would imagine. There's no other way for the information to be obtained other than through the NCIC files, which is only available to us. I mean, if we go through the car wash, we have to lock our computer screen so that people don't have access to the data. I would imagine that it would be the same, but I mean, we can find that out, but I can't imagine that it would be different. I was just
sheer curiosity as to who has access to the data in the, even for law-abiding citizens.
Right.
So, thank you.
Yeah, and what we could potentially do as well is gather up all of those sort of granular questions. Once we understand where they are and who wants to participate, I'll be happy to set up a demo, Q&A with the Flock folks specifically to get those questions answered.
Sergeant Auden is actually watching the meeting right now, and he's the one that did all the research for this project, and he just texted me and said that all of the data does go through NCIC, so there would be no way for anybody other than law enforcement to get that.
Yes.
And I just had another quick thing. The presentation I had seen with another city was it could also help when there's Amber Alerts, and also if there's a person with dementia or something, a lost person, which we see on the news a lot that happens, it could trace that license plate, right, and like figure out where they're at, maybe find them before something would happen, correct? Okay, thank you.
This is a question for Chief Rader. I know when we were talking about the body cams several years ago, you kind of used like you talked about different levels of body cameras, or different brands, I guess, not levels, brands of body cams, and kind of, I know the one we ended up with is what you called the Cadillac. Would you say that this is the Cadillac? I mean, I'm sure there's competitors out there to Flock. They're probably not the only name in the game, but would you say, in your doing the research on these, that this is the Cadillac of this type of system?
It is. We have kind of dabbled in it throughout the years of trying to take advantage of LPRs, and they just generally, to be honest, they just don't work great. They become a hassle. The software always goes down. Issues with the actual cameras themselves. From everybody that we have talked to in the research that we've done, that's why they're this expensive, because they just work.
Yeah, they've, I believe when we first started looking at this with Auden kind of doing the initial research, there was a trial period. They have since gotten rid of that because they continue to add more and more municipalities. They're up over 1,000 nationwide now that have these Flock cameras, and I think they're kind of reinvesting in that technology. So definitely, to your point, I think maybe Cadillac would be a good way to look at this. The other thing, I think, Diana, you mentioned the Amber Alert. This is a real-time sort of case study where this actually happened. There was an Amber Alert issued, and this is up on your screen right now. 12:33, real-time search conducted with Flock safety. 30 minutes later at 1:01, suspect vehicle located due to this technology at 2:30. Felony stop and arrest at 5:03, and the baby was reunited same day with the mother at 6 o'clock. So this is how that technology can help to move investigations along. The secondary sort of benefit to this is deterrent, in my view, and that's the whole reason that this legislation was brought forward. Let's see what we can do in some problematic areas. I think this is a really smart, targeted approach to this.
Sorry, I keep thinking of other questions. I know you mentioned earlier, and I think you mentioned it during this presentation too, that this also features gunshot detection, which I don't feel like is a huge issue in Erlanger, but I feel like I've heard that it is utilized, and maybe it's not exactly this technology, in Cincinnati for like tracking which neighborhoods have more gunshots. I don't know, I might have made that up, but maybe one of you can comment on that.
I know there is a part of this that can do that, but that's not something that we researched. We didn't feel that we had the need to spend the extra money on it. I don't know if they're wanting to add that on, or?
Yeah, I think that feature does come on the cameras that we were looking at, so I think it would be an ancillary benefit. Again, probably not super needed for what we are wanting, but definitely something that it does offer in that technology. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, that concludes our agenda. Do I entertain a motion that we adjourn? Ms. Reckers, Ms. Kyle, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Have a good evening.